to get started. We have about 2 hours to go through a very exciting discussion, and we have about 4.5 perspectives, half being mine, because it's not about me today. I will be helping to steer the conversations. My name is Chilande Kuloba Waria, usually based out of Nairobi, Kenya, but I'm glad to be in the land of 1,000 hills and beautiful people. So thank you for welcoming us into this safe zone. This conversation, in case you are lost, we are going to be talking about how to decommission what no longer works. I think since morning we have been told over and over that there are some things that we've just been inheriting, that we've been doing over the years that are not serving us. It is a new dispensation. We need to get rid of those and then make way for new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, new ways of relating. Today's conversationalists are going to take us through that journey. I am going to introduce them one by one to quickly take 1 minute. I'm going to call upon you. Mona Lisa today is going to really talk to us about some of those invisible things, some norms, some legacies that we really need to get rid of, and some new ways of thinking around this as we unlock this new dispensation. So Mona Lisa, I'll give you, just tell us a little bit about your organization so that we get that out of the way.
Hi, how are we doing? My name is Mona Lisa Kintole. I work with and for Uganda National Trans Forum, which is a coordinating body for trans and gender diverse organizations in Uganda. We really exist to bridge the divide, or the space in which we don't really collaborate and work together. And so that space is for us to intentionally work together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then next, I'm going to call upon my sister, Ima. Ima has the tough and wonderful task of representing some funder perspectives. I know she's got some case studies to illustrate for us some of the things that from a funder perspective need to start, decommissioning or commission. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Immaculate Mugo. Please refer to me as Ima. My pronouns are she, her. I work for an organization called Urgent Action Fund Africa. We're a Pan-African feminist rapid response fund. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. What that means is that we provide resources at a particular moment in time. I'm in to catalyze a certain process or an activity when in times of crisis. So we work across the African continent, and we resource women in their diversity. Women in their diversity. Yeah.
Fantastic. Washington's perspective is really about holding us accountable for the statements that we make about let's not leave anybody behind. So giving us some ideas, some thoughts, challenging us about how to ensure that participation truly is participation and inclusive.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for trying to say that. So my name is Washington Opiosati. I work for Disability Rights Fund. So this is a global participative grant-making organization that supports organizations of persons with disabilities in Africa, Asia, the Pacific, and the Caribbean islands. And we aim to create opportunities where resources go to the organizations of persons with disabilities that are really struggling to access resources. So we work towards amplifying their voice to promote their human rights in those regions that I mentioned. And I look forward to having a very constructive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Washington. Last but not least, last because she comes as a group, as a collective, Nairobi. Joyce, whose perspectives behind her team is really helping us to really think about those institutional things, the norms, the things we've been doing over and over in the name of systems and policies and things that need to perhaps be reconsidered. Please introduce your team, and then I suspect after this I've been kicked out, you'll carry it forward and help us get going with the conversation.
Great. Thank you very much. I was sitting wondering, how am I going to greet everybody in their own language? I just couldn't put it together. So I chose the one that I think is a little bit universal. Please watch me. I have genuinely greeted everybody, I think, even if I don't know their language. So my name is Nairuba Joyce, and with me are my colleagues from Moving Minds Alliance. I would like to call upon Cassie Joseph, please. So Moving Minds Alliance, as you'll come to see, is a multi-stakeholder alliance whose mission is to advocate for early childhood development in every crisis response. It's a big job, right? So what we do then is leverage the different strength of the different actors, so everybody can bring on board something and everybody can reach the people that they are dealing with to ensure that we continue to advocate for all these young children who are usually missed out, so that they can get early childhood development and they can get nurturing care. So we do strategic advocacy, we do fund research, local research, and we also do fund journalism, and we are very keen on policies that are inclusive so that these children can actually get what they need. You're welcome. Allow me to immediately hand over to Lola. She has the fun things. I just know how to talk.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Hope you had a nice lunch. So we'll kick off this co-creation lab with a fast-paced activity that will need you to move around so that your food can digest a little bit. Right? IT, if you can please change it to the next slide. So this activity is called speed dating. I mean, this is not time to find the perfect romantic match. It is time for us to actually learn more about who is in the room. Some of us here are introverts, like myself, so I hope this helps you to kind of connect with at least 3 people or 5 people today before we go. So here's what will happen. The instruction is this. We'll display some questions on the screen. Every 1 minute, I would give you an imaginary bell. Each time you hear the bell, you have to find somebody new to talk to and ask them any of this question as a conversation starter. So why were you created? Why were you created? What did you once do well as an organization? What harm might you be causing to this ecosystem of ours? And are you still as useful as you used to be? We are here to have some honest conversations. All through today, we've been provoked. And it's time for us to actually create something good to take us forward. So can we all rise now? We'll start. This is the first 1 minute. Find your first partner. Don't be scared. Next, change your partners. Speed dating. No, you can ask just 1 or 2 and move to the next person, please. It's called speed dating. Speed dating for a reason. Switch. IT, please change the slide. Can we please come back? Can we please come back? Thank you. IT, please change the slide. Next. Thank you. Can we have our seats, please? All right, now we start the next track. If you're standing, you're wrong. Please see it so that we can continue and finish on time. Thank you for your cooperation. I wish I had the magic wand to see people's names. I can call out their names. So the essence of conversation starter is to set the tone for this discussion. We hope that you had some honest conversations with the people you spoke with. So now, in the course of the next 2 hours, we'll take you through 4 tracks. Each track will be 25 minutes each. By that, I mean different topics. So for the first track, we have Mona Lisa. Can you please come forward? We'll facilitate a participatory session, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I love speed dating. I didn't know it was that fun. I want to do it more. But really, I think for my talk, it's speaking about the hidden norms and legacies within the philanthropic space. And I want to bring it to the experiences that we face, not really as trans organizations only, but really as people that do this work around social justice, moving and seeing things done differently, right? And so from where I coordinate the Uganda National Trans Forum, once again, it's a coordinating body space, you can say, where we are bringing each other together on this journey of what kind of change do we want to see within the community that we serve as trans and gender diverse persons. But really my experience or experiences will sort of fit into what all of you here have also experienced in the work that you do. So I want to begin off by saying something here that I found very intriguing or exciting for me to read that I want to share with you. I don't want to keep that. Okay. So as I was thinking about what to tell every one of you in this room, I had to sit back in my home and zoom all the way out and undo the things I've known myself to be working within this philanthropic space. And so for starters, I want to say that if we must decommission what was designed to control, not to care, true transformation then begins when we bury the systems that reward compliance over courage, outputs over justice, and charity over solidarity. So then I'll go on to my experiences, because that is what I've lived as a person that coordinates this entity for 8 years. But really, we are so very nascent, but we've been doing it underground. So in most of the work that we do as organizations, like my own marginalized communities or organizations, is that there's always the power dynamic, right? And I know we hear this word in every space that we go to say to ourselves, what does power mean when you are trying to fund organizations like our own? First of all, we are looked at as risky organizations to fund. And so even approaching that conversation of how do you then fund an organization like the Uganda National Trans Forum becomes quite challenging, right? Because then we are always approaching our funders, our donors, with the beggar mentality. And I think for me, talking about this truthfully is to then ask all of us in this room, how do you then support us as these organizations that do this work to approach funding in a very different way? And I don't know all the figures and statistics when it comes to funding within our own space, but what I can assure you is that funding that goes to organizations like my own is very minuscule. So to begin to bargain and have the power dynamic in that space is really hard. And what also people that give us these monies look up to is, are you feeding into my theme? Are you feeding into the themes that I create for you? So there is no space for us to co-create outside the thematic areas that we have been given by our donors. So then how do you begin to have a conversation of I want to innovate differently, think differently about the way I do this work with the funding that does not give you that flexibility to do so? And I have an example of an organization that is in Arua, and I don't know if many of us know Arua anyway. So they approach us. They approach the UNTF because then we coordinate this work. They had received, no, they hadn't received. They were about to receive funding from a particular organization that does work around emergency relocation. And so what the donor told them was, how are you going to be able to record for us the number of cases of people that have been violated? And this organization came to us not because they didn't want to be able to account for that money, but they were like, how do you put numbers to the trauma that people face? And how do you constantly go to these communities and ask them, how many people have you reached this month in terms of giving relocation? And not relocation in its broad sense, but particularly relocation around moving from one area where you've been violated to another area. And so even donors were not flexible around allowing us to be able to find ways we were going to do that. They already came with ways on how that would be done from their side. And so all the matrix and all this data that we speak about was you had to reach a certain target for you actually to qualify. It's like they needed you to get out of, not to get out per se, sorry. They needed more numbers of people that needed emergency to actually qualify for that funding. And so you needed to report to them before you received the funding to actually give it to the people that were in that dire situation. Capacity deficit syndrome. I don't know if that is a hidden norm or it's something that is visible for us to acknowledge. I've worked in this sector for 8 years. I would say I'm very nascent at that. But for the number of times, funding that comes to organizations is around capacitating us to move from place A to place B. And there is nothing beyond that capacity that these donors speak to us about. And so even the capacity is done from somebody in the UK or the US to qualify as somebody that is really capacitated to give you this knowledge. And so even the communities that do this work are not held in high regard and respect to say that now that you're living this reality, you are in charge on how you capacity build and move your organizations from point A to point B. So enough about my speech in how that is not fair, because that has been heard and said over and over again. But how do we move forward? And as I was listening to the opening remarks and speeches in the morning, I had a very beautiful presentation I was ready to give to you today. But then after listening to the people that came before me, I had to rethink, to reimagine, is this going to make sense now? So really, I just want to put you into, I'm not going to put you into groups. I want you to sit with yourself. Yeah? So my activity is about sitting with yourself and looking at those things that no longer serve the communities where you come from, and what do you hope to do differently with those things that you have identified. So I don't want to pair us into groups because that means you take an answer that doesn't belong to you or it's not within your context. So please sit with yourself for 5 minutes. I'll be counting. And please help me unearth those hidden legacies and norms that no longer serve us, the philanthropic sector, as we do this work moving forward. Or maybe as the sticky notes move around, can I have like 3 people that want to speak to that? The hidden norms and legacies you want to let go of.
I'm from an international NGO based in the UK, and we mainly work with partners in different countries related to disaster relief and supporting in protracted crises. And I think what I have found that I've been challenged on personally in my career in the last few years is around the colonization of aid, the power structures, as you were mentioning earlier, and the lack of listening to people that have actually been affected by the crises that we work with. And I would love to see in my own organization, in my own career, to move to a place of servitude, of listening, of not trying to dictate and really not do this power shift that we're talking about, but rather a power rebalancing to look at how we sit with each other as a global community and not this north, south, east, west, however we want to divide ourselves, but actually really see how we can come together to solve the world's problems. And that needs to come, I think what I've picked up on this session so far is Africa has African solutions. And while I'm based in the UK, I am South African, and I can guarantee that South Africans have South African solutions. They're clever, they're in creative, hardworking, and that is just not appreciated in the same way from the global north, or however you want to phrase it right at this time. But yeah, let's reimagine these structures. Let's figure out ways that we are throwing out the bad, holding on to the good, and creating even better as a community together.
And so to pay close attention and be intentional about breaking those systems and create anew, afresh, is very important. And so, yes, it's something that I myself also want to contribute to as I move forward doing this work. Did you have something to say, please?
I was reflecting on how hard it is for me to come up with a list of norms and things that need to be decommissioned, and it's probably because I speak from a place of privilege. And it's not for me to make the list of things that should be decommissioned, it's for people who are impacted negatively by those norms and these legacy practices. They should tell me what needs to be decommissioned, and I can be part of the solution to decommission that and be part of that process. But it's, the same way we shouldn't go and tell people, like you were saying, what their problems are. They should be telling us what the problem is, and they should be telling us what the problem is with our system, our norms, and our practices.
That MMA, which is Moving Minds Alliance, started out that way. It began in 2017 like a donor collaborative. So by default, everything about them was the global north, the procedures, the way they think, the way they talk. Everything was about the global north. They will let us know what to do. But then things began to shift because they were not really working out. So they started to think about, how do we get the people whom we are representing? We said we advocate, right, for ECD. So how do we get them to be much more involved in what we are doing? What is it that we can change so we are not talking to these people, but they are able to speak for themselves about what they really need? And one of the big moves that happened in the past year was actually opening up and getting more refugees on board in terms of them being part of the MMA. So as I speak now, the co-chair of the movement is a refugee. Hey. So they went ahead and said, okay, that is probably not enough. It's just up there. When we want to advocate for these children and the issues they are facing around early childhood development, who else will help us to do that? And MMA formed an expert advisory group, which is made of locally led organizations, again, and refugees. Because we are all out for those children in crisis, those children who are affected by crisis. So Cassie Joseph came to actually represent because he's a member of that expert advisory group. Now, we talked about the local organizations, locally led organizations, and that bit was missing. So MMA only has one local organization, and it is being represented by yours truly. That organization is LABE. But surely, will LABE talk about all the issues that affect the children? Impossible. So MMA is now reviewing its membership policies to ensure that they are more opening up the space so more locally led organizations can actually participate in the decision-making processes of MMA. And not just as figureheads, you know, counting how many do we have now? Oh, 4. Okay, we are good. Should we add any more? No, that's not the point. The point is letting these organizations to actually take decisions, to inform MMA of what is going on. You cannot tell me that you're going to be advocating for the children in crisis who are down in camps, and then you leave out the locally led organizations, because they are the ones who reach these communities, these children. So MMA realizes that for it to truly say, yeah, we are very committed to making these changes and ensuring that we are decommissioning what doesn't work, they realize that they need more of these organizations on board. Are we there? Am I preaching? To the choir. And that is exactly what I said. Who are those people that need to be represented? Next time I hope not just the choir, but also the congregation. I'm going to say that it has been an easy journey. And I would like to assure you that it's still work in progress. Learning, coming to these conferences, and picking new ideas to make sure that MMA continues to evolve. So when we start this journey of decommissioning, it's not something, so it's not a journey that you will say you will start in one day, so by tomorrow we have finished decommissioning, and we are perfect. That's impossible. It's a journey which even begins with yourself. Do you want to budge? We were in a work stream down there, and they asked, even Mona Lisa asked, what do you want to throw out? My friend, you look at everything and you think, should it be this one? No, but we need that one. But we need that one. Because you're also looking out for yourself, to protect yourself. They said down there, we should stop looking at these things like just jobs and look at them genuinely from the African context, African philanthropy. We are here to help each other. So how do we do that? Decommission what doesn't work and take on new ideas so we can do this and do it well. My last question to you will be, are you ready to walk this talk? Or did you just come to enjoy yourself? I will hand over to Lola so she can take us deeper into that conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joyce. The Moving Minds Alliance of 2021 would have been represented here today by White Boss, directing the Alliance. But we have flipped the script. We are committed to the change, and we are here with those that we work for. And this conversation for the next 10 minutes is for you as well to be truthful to yourself and reflect. What are some of the habits? Because when we reflect in the sector, we always talk about what is happening broadly. But we are all members of the ecosystem. And each one of us are contributing something. Earlier on, we asked you, what harm might you be causing? For MMA, the harm we were causing was our policy that clearly excluded the people we work with from the table. And we had to clearly commit to bringing them to the table in action. So for you here today, what are some institutional habits in your organizations that might be written or unwritten that is actually making you feel like a cage or making you not to be agile, adaptive in this time in the sector? So we want you to sit together in pairs, have a conversation, and anyone that is bold enough to share will have the mic. So we have the next 5 minutes to have a conversation on what are the institutional habits that is good on your organization that might be making you not to be agile, like we said, adaptive, responsive, that might intentionally even exclude some people that you might not have reflected on before you came here, but as you've been part of conversations since we started in the last couple of hours, you started to think them differently. Can you please find a partner and just have a conversation, honest conversation on those things? Thank you. Thank you for having some honest conversations. We would like to break now for discussions. Who is bold to share what emerged in your discussion? Anyone? You must not mention your organization like we did. You can just tell us what emerged in your group discussion. What institutional habits makes your organization feel like a cage?
I think there is this sort of mindset thing within us as development partners or development people, where we think we know it all, and we're reflecting around when you're designing a project or program, a proposal. Sometimes you don't need even to consult the people you're targeting, because you think you know what the needs are, and so you have a turnaround of a month or 2 weeks to write a proposal, and so there's no need to consult them. So you just sit around and do it. So that's a barrier that we saw. And also, even when you go down to speak to the people, one of the barriers, I think the keg is around the who you speak to. Because at the community, we know that there are people who position themselves as speakers for others. And so you will never speak to that woman who has a challenge. You will never speak to that boy who has a challenge. You will speak to the chairman of something, and those are the ones that represent the others. And that we need to break it a bit and focus on the right people that we are aiming to serve. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Jules Murula. I serve as the country director at Soccer Without Borders, and we're based in Kampala. We use soccer as a vehicle for positive change. From our discussion here, we mostly addressed the element of timelines and also change as a journey, but also the change we want to see. And we're wondering if an organization, for example, we had a very good example from our conversation here, existing for over 25 years, addressing the same issue or the same thematic area, and we're wondering what else or how else do we come out of this, because this is an issue that was there 25 years ago, but the address is still kind of the same. The second one was looking at what we call a comprehensive problem analysis to shape the approach to radically address it. And we had a very good example from the Disability Rights Fund that looks at approaches used in communities to address disability. Rather, instead, they do or are running to what we call surgeries, quick-oriented process to solve the issue, rather than really deploying larger access to disability. And the last one is looking at the global village and balancing both local and internationally or intercontinental issues. How is Uganda different from Nicaragua? How does Uganda look different from the US? And also, how do we then shape programs, even if we're working across the same vision, but how do still our programs address the local issues and not make sure we are not just in the umbrella of alignment as much? Thank you.
You know, Every single time I sit in rooms, we constantly have these conversations, and we talk, and we speak the Queen's English, we articulate ourselves, we say all these big words as the nonprofit sector, and we circle back again to the same conversation 5 years from now. How do we change? We circle back. What are we removing? What are we going to change in the system? We'll come back to this again in 5 years. 5 years ago, COVID happened. We had a conversation. How do we bring things back into localization? But we're still having the conversation today. We also, in this year, have to recognize that all of us sitting in this room, there's a privilege. I'm glad that someone spoke about it. I'm speaking from a place of privilege. The privilege is not just only the Global North now, but the nonprofits that are here, you were able to pay, you are still employed, there are programs that you didn't need to close down, but we have counterparts who had to close down 98% of their programs. And we sit here and we say, what do we need to change in the ecosystem? What we do most of the time, and the habits that we've carried is, if you become that agency that had a Global North headquarters and it becomes Africa, we take the same forms that they used. We take the same theory of change that they used. We never change anything. We don't change anything. We still have the same board members that they had that blocked a lot of things because they give us credibility. So if we are going to be effecting change, then we really need to look introspectively from the privilege that we are sitting in this room. If you were able to pay for a flight, for a taxi, for a hotel room, then there's a privilege there. If you're able to sit here and have this conversation, there's a privilege there. So sit in that and look at what are the changes that you could make. Effecting change it's not an easy thing. It's challenging so many systems. So challenging a system to say your board members are wrong, and saying to them, if you've got 5 white board members and only 1 black board member because you brought them in because they are the voice of the people. No, it should be the other way. And that's a challenge. And is it a challenge that we're taking up? Are these the things that we're changing? Let's not have this conversation 5 years from now again. Because then we're just perpetuating the same cycle every single time. We should be eradicating the problems that we exist to solve. And if there are more problems that come in, we should be moving on to solve those. Thank you.
We have identified some gaps with the contracts that we go through and the MOUs. And I believe there's so much that needs to happen. Number one, we have also identified as a group that there's need for legal aid for all the stakeholders before they can sign the contracts. You find that the contracts that we have are donor contracts. Let me call them that. They don't take care of what community needs are. So at the end of the day, we are signing a contract, which is a binding document, but only favors one side. So the conversation that we need to have is, before signing these contracts, have we involved all the parties that are privy to that contract? Because basically what has been happening, we have been protecting one party. And we always have more than one party to that contract. So that is number one issue we have identified. Also, matter governance. How do you run these organizations or these partnerships? I believe the community needs to be involved from the word go. And the matters that also count, reporting. How do we report? We all know that with philanthropy, we report up. Let me call it like that. From the community to the donor. So how do we bridge that gap? So I believe that is part of the conversation that we need to have. Thank you. I don't want to repeat what others have said. We have identified them, but those are the 2 major issues that we came up with. Thank you.
But before we wrap up this segment, let's take a moment to pause and reflect individually. Think back to the conversation we've had for the last 20 minutes. What's one institutional habit you are now questioning? I think we've had a lot of, since morning we were talking about change, we're talking about a lot of things, and now we are talking about institutional habits. But now, from the moment we've been talking about these institutional habits, what's one institutional habit that you are now questioning? That can either be a routine you've always accepted as just the way things are. That can either be a policy, it can be a mindset, or a way of working that no longer serves your organization. It's good you take some time to reflect around that. But also, what's one small shift you could try in your organization? That can be a new way of making decisions. It can be a different way of listening. It can be a small experiment that could open doors to something bigger. Take a moment to jot that down, whatever you've thought about. Do that either on a sticky note. You can either do on your phone or in your phone. You can even have it in your mind. But then, before we close, we need to understand that we cannot break habit by force. So there's no way we can break habits by force. But we can break them by building something more beautiful. It's impossible. You can't change a behavior in someone by bringing a stick and start kicking that person. But if you bring something more beautiful in front of that person, I think we can change that person's behavior. But also, this work that we are doing, it's not about tearing things down. It's about reimagining. It's about choosing emergence over control. It's about curiosity over certainty. It's about courage over comfort. Before you leave here today, think about that one small shift. That one small shift you'll try in the next weeks. Can you share that with a friend, with a colleague? And please invite them into your experiment. I'm happy with what my sister was sharing there. That was so helpful. It's not about us coming to tick boxes, but it's now time for us to start thinking about what is it that we need to do, that those tangible things that we need to start doing to ensure that change, we can see change happening. I will not want to subject you to a lot of, I know we've shared a lot, so I don't want us to keep sharing more and more, but I'll take back the mic to Washington, and we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
I want to do it in sign language, but I just remembered that that would be too much and injustice to you. So let us just do a simple one with our bodies. So where we are going to spell the word coconut with our bodies. Okay? We start with which letter? C. So let us do it. You draw a C with your own body. So, C. Make sure you achieve that. Draw a C. Then an O. Let's go to an O. Then finally a T. So, a T. Yeah. Thank you, thank you. So before I begin, I know that you may be in one way or another have interacted with disability. And what I must say is disability is very complex. and disability is multidimensional as well. And some disability also varies. One disability means maybe needs a different support, not the same, but the same disability but requires different kind of intervention and different level of support. So, and I know that in our area of philanthropy, a lot is still remains to be done, because in terms of data, it shows clearly that in the philanthropy sector, only 4% of the funding in human rights goes to disability issues. So this shows a big gap. So, and this is why we should bring disability into our business, into our work. So that's the aim of this session. So we will help you to do mapping, also to agree on how to ensure that your programs are disability inclusive. But before that, I feel it's important to give some experience as a deaf person, so that you, as you reflect, you can really understand how persons with disabilities face barriers and exclusion from community, family, in the education sector, and employment as well. So I will quickly share my personal experience as a deaf person. And I don't mean my experience is similar to all other people with, who are deaf. So for the past 30 years, in my journey, as a person with disability, I lost my hearing at the age of 6 through meningitis. This is a common sickness that has been there. So when I lost my hearing, my world really changed, and it became very silent. I felt like I couldn't hear any noise, no birds chirping, really very quiet. So, and my mother, who was taking care of me, also experienced some level of exclusion, discrimination as well within the community, because there was a perception that maybe it's a curse from maybe our behavior or sin. And my parents experienced different kinds of, challenges. So they were asked what could have caused this. Because of those perspectives within the community, they forced my mom to look for different interventions, maybe go for prayers in different churches and pray and move to different religious sectors for prayer or something. Then we moved to African science. I think you all know what I mean, and of course it did not work. And at the end of the day, I was left, just there. They tried to drop me in a mainstream school, but that school said they don't have the skills, they don't have the knowledge and the experience to meet my special needs. So I was, again, I didn't go to school until 2 years later, when the local administrator felt there's a school for the deaf somewhere. Maybe I could go there and try to learn there. But not that people with disability cannot learn in mainstream schools, they can. But then I was taken to the deaf school where I got my education, but just not like you, but through such struggle. I can say 10% of my teachers, only them knew sign language. The rest, that is 90% of the teachers, did not know sign language. That meant we had to learn by ourselves. So So when I moved to secondary school, the same, and even the university, it's the same. I did not have an interpreter, sign language interpreter. So I had to depend on my friend sitting next to me to go through my university college education. So I requested for an interpreter. I was not provided for. So they couldn't provide me with that. So when I finished university after 4 years without any sign language interpreter, I went seeking for employment. And of course, I experienced many barriers. I remember one time I was interviewed. Then the panelists asked me, Mr. Washington, are these your certificates? Or is it some certificates that you maybe collected somewhere and came with them? And of course, I told them I went through education and university, and they were really surprised. Unfortunately, they still didn't give me the job. So I kept moving for other interviews. Then that job was good. And when I finished the interview, they said, we are really impressed with your performance, but we don't have the budget to consider your reasonable accommodation. So maybe from your salary, we could take something to pay the sign language interpreter. And I was really surprised because I needed a job, but I told them, I don't need a full-time sign language interpreter, maybe on a need basis, but they still didn't give me the job. So I had to move to again look for a job, and let me cut the story short. But finally I got into employment where I got a job, and I was able now to get to other different jobs and move. But what I must say, our levels of barriers are different, including at the family level. So, because when I was planning to get married, I experienced different barriers at the family level. They asked, if you marry, don't you think you get more deaf children? So, you see, a lot of frustrations, a lot of barriers, not with family, simply because people are not very, maybe they don't know much. So that's brief experience of what I've gone through in terms of exclusion. But I must say that each person with disability experienced different kind of barriers. I know I have 5 minutes to share, but I want to go back to you as organizations, where I will ask my colleague Chrissy to come and help us understand what are the different approach or ways that we can address the barriers that we are facing in terms of inclusion in your organizations. Then we can move to the next part. So I want to invite Chrissy to come in.
How have we supported disability inclusion? What has worked and what has not worked? So I want us to briefly think about this, and then if you are most welcome to raise up your hand and share how you've promoted disability inclusion in the work that you are doing. What has worked and what has not worked. So we have 30 seconds to think about this, and then let's share how we've promoted disability inclusion.
Okay, my name is Jane Anyango from Polycom Girls, based in Nairobi, Kenya. So we have a small sanitary towel making company, and what we have done is that we make special sanitary towels for girls with disability, the ones who are physically challenged. So we don't put gum on the pad so that it's easier for them to remove when they're changing. I know it's not common. We are all used to the pads that have the gum that we stick. But you can imagine how hard that is for a girl who cannot stand up and change. Thank you.
Thank Thank you very much. My name is Fode Bangura. I'm originally from Sierra Leone, currently based in Rwanda though. A few years ago, I did some kind of consultancy with an organization called Disability Africa. It's UK based but operates through partnership in Africa. And I have to say honestly, inclusion is one of the hardest and most difficult challenge humanity faces. It's not just even African thing, but humanity itself. And adultism makes it more difficult. And I mean, if you grow up and become an adult through a process where you are raised in a society where you see people with disability are being excluded, you grow up with that idea. It's always that way. And then one thing we did at Disability Africa back then was that for us to bridge the gap in inclusion, we have to start when they are young. That means we have to teach children inclusion. So we don't go for adults. Instead, what we designed an idea called a play scheme. So a play scheme is a learning platform, but it's out of the classroom. It's not a classroom thing. It's a community thing where we bring every child, every category, whether able or disabled, but you mix, you play, and then you learn. And then one of the important thing about that is that play is the fastest way of learning for children. It is the fastest. So we put them together. They play games, they sing songs, we teach them songs, and then one of the lessons we learned is that when children meet, they don't know what exclusion is. I think it's parents that teach children exclusion. It's communities that teach children exclusion. Because from my own personal observation, when I'm there, I forget about everything. I'm just amazed by the idea that children are just playing and enjoying and learning. They don't know, okay, this is disabled, let me just leave. They don't do that. So I think it's important we start practicing that. We teach children inclusion. We teach them that, okay, this is your peer, and she's your friend, is your friend. Do not see her or him as a person with disability. And then I want to leave you with this. Disability is not inability. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
To be, I can say brief, when it comes to promoting inclusion of people with disability, the best approach is to talk less by words and talk more by actions. Be pragmatic. Don't waste your time in your sensitization campaigns. Give jobs to people with disabilities, facilitate them to access finances and create businesses for them, improve their livelihood, and this will be the way of removing barriers to inclusion. The last word, disability is a disability because we deny people with disability chance to participate. Let them participate. Let them be elected as mayors. Let them elected as MPs. Give them, just appoint them to jobs like any other persons. Make them ministers and presidents. Then disability will disappear. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief and maybe she could also comment. My name is Naomi. I'm with Light for the World International. Very nice to hear from you, Washington, and I would like to meet you shortly. And we have worked with VSO as well. Our main work is disability inclusion. We focus on disability inclusion, so this is all quite, relevant to us. One of the ways we are trying to improve our work, and it's quite a big topic in this conference about co-creation, right? Especially when designing programs, participatory approaches. So we are co-creating with people with disabilities. We don't have any programs that we have just developed, on our own. Let's say without the lived experiences of people with disabilities. One of our main programs is We Can Work, which is funded by the MasterCard Foundation. They support some partners here in Rwanda. And we have actually worked with MasterCard Foundation themselves on their disability inclusion strategy. So all philanthropists in this conference as well, we also need to speak to both the design side of when we're talking about disability inclusion. The design side, we have to give that space for co-creation as well as talking with the communities directly. Thank you so much.
I'm Pamela Kaiduru from African Coalition of Communities Responsive to Climate Change. When we started engaging in issues, mental health and climate-related disasters, we would go through the formal system of bringing in participants or stakeholders. And we would find oftentimes people with disability were either not brought in as stakeholders, or when they came, you find just one person, so they were not being represented. So what did we do differently? Engaging with organizations that are directly working with the persons with disability, so that then they are more included in the activities. Because at the end of the day, they also face a lot of trauma. Even when a flood occurs, oftentimes a person who is limited in hearing, I don't have the right one to use, I know. This person will not maybe hear the noise when people are running. So they likely will be left. A person with a physical disability may not be able to run away from a flood or run away from a fire. They will always often be left out. So empowering them through their networks has worked better, because they have also a voice to put in issues, mental health and well-being of our communities. So I would urge philanthropists here to think of ways that are more inclusive and more responsive to the various disabilities that we face as society.
And I noted some of you also mentioned what you think should happen so that we ensure that our programs and services are disability inclusive. So my session, I don't want to repeat that again, but I want to conclude as we did before. So we are going to think of what we should decommission, or how we should address disability inclusion in your philanthropy work. Maybe I will, in the interest of time, I don't want to do group discussions or group work again, because I want to ask you to you pair. That is your immediate neighbor. Then you can ask a question. How can you address disability inclusion gaps in your organization? Or in other words, what should we decommission, and what should we stop doing to help us become disability inclusive, to respond to the issues in our organizations? Maybe you can pair. Then I will conclude the session. Attention, please. Attention, please. Because of time, we have to proceed. So I'm just going to pick two people who can tell us what you discussed or what you're planning to stop doing, and what you're going to embrace to make sure that your programs are disability inclusive. So how will you do that? Let us think of not only within our organizations, but also in different platforms, in different avenues, on how we can advance disability inclusion. So anybody can start.
Faith Discipleship Ministries International. I've loved the interpreter and the facilitator. And what came into my mind, in our organization, we need to train our staff, our board, how to handle people of different disabilities. Like that of deaf, we need to have some people who can interpret. You never know, someone can come to your office, doesn't know how to speak, is using sign language, but when you have no knowledge about it, so that one came into my mind, that I need to go back and also find a way, how can we train and equip our staff to have knowledge of handling people of different disabilities. Thank you.
With my neighbor here, we've discussed a few issues. One of them is to stop sympathizing, but to take action if we are to start with inclusion. 2, we need to put policies in place to favor inclusion. I can cite an example. People are constructing buildings for organizations and they put steps. Someone comes to ask for a job and they say your office is upstairs and you can't go those steps. Then, even if you have a wheelchair, you can't go there. So we need policies that favor inclusion. Even when they are constructing roads, we should come in to help. And 3, let us put budgets to favor inclusion in our organizations. Thank you very much.
So thank you. Let us appreciate them. Like this. This is how we appreciate. And in the area of reasonable accommodation, I need to emphasize on each disability requires different levels of reasonable accommodation. For example, I am a deaf person, and my colleague Chrissy needs a personal assistant. Another person will need a caregiver. So those come with costs. And as you can see, some people see that as a burden, but that's a right. And that's a duty for us to become members, of the community. Because we discussed on how we should ensure that our communities are inclusive, it's important to remember the need to have that in your programs. Just like he said, we need to think on how we can work with our budgets and allocate and favor those needs as well. So within the philanthropy communities or sector, I need to encourage you not to see organizations of persons with disabilities as risk organizations, because many times organizations of persons with disabilities, you may feel they are risk organizations, just like the other person said on how they put small effort, then they partner with other organizations. So what I'm saying is we should find a way on how to empower organizations of persons with disabilities for those in philanthropy sector to ensure that your application processes are accessible. For example, for the blind, they can use the screen readers, and they have assistive devices where the technology can allow persons who are visually impaired to access that information. Either it can be in Braille or just easy to read language for them to understand, and also using multi-languages to help them access those applications. And the other thing that I want to emphasize on, I know my time is running short, we should appreciate that we should see disability as something that will enrich your programs, that make your programs become better, not seeing disability as something that will, but something that will help you serve the wider community. And also, to conclude on what I'm saying, organizations of persons with disabilities, they have experience, they have the knowledge, and they have competence, and they can deliver. So I encourage you to partner with organizations of persons with disabilities in your programs to make your programs more inclusive as well. So thank you so much for listening, and sorry I took much time. So I hand it over back to her. Thank you so much.
And I am going to take the opportunity to just summarize in terms of the conversations that we've had, and then just quickly touch on resource mobilization and funding, and some of the gaps, but also the opportunities that are there, right? So throughout, oh, you can't hear me. Oh, can you hear me now? Oh, hey, that just sounds just very wrong. Can you hear me? Just wave at the back. Okay, this is much better. Throughout the conversations and listening to all of our speakers, a couple of things have become clear, or have been weaving through. The first one is around organizing and thinking differently. So for us, then, what are we taking away from this conversation? What are we going to take back into our organizations, into our movements, to be able to ensure that what it is that we've heard here does not just stay here, but trickles down, right? That's the first one. And then there was an aspect around the power dynamics, and the question for us was, what does power look like? Instead of having power over, how do we exercise power with? And working with movements to be able to ensure that they achieve what they need to, with resources that are able to support that.
People must change, trust us more, embrace risk, learn forward, backwards, and fast at something. It's 2025, and this person told me, honestly, if you're still convincing somebody right now, I don't think they can be convinced. Lots of conversations have happened. So I would like for us to unpack, what does it mean for us to actually get ready? What do you need to do these things? Funders are in the room. Why can't we just give these folks money? Why aren't we funding disability? What is that thing? What do we need to just feel like we are ready? Anything? We are just dreaming here. This is a space for dreaming. Dreams eventually come true. Why do we always say we need to do this? We should do this. We must be ready. We should do. What is that thing that we need concretely that we can do to take some of these things forward?
Take your pen.
Take your pen.
And write one thing you are going to do.
Love it. Do it. Yes.
Thank you very much. I think we need to stop working in silos.
Okay.
We have been meeting in different conferences, and we keep saying we need to work collaboratively. But the moment we step out of this room, we wait for another conference to engage. So can we continue to talk to each other beyond the conferences? I know organizations, they compete for funding. They try to outshine each other. But at the end of the day, if you want to move the philanthropy agenda, then we just need to stop working in silos.
We have to stop working in silos.
So let's listen to new ideas and work with local organizations. I know what has happened to us in the past. We had an emergency. We wrote a very good proposal. And so we were introduced to another organization. And then now we had to work under that organization.
Right.
So ours was supposed to be neighborhood circle conversations.
Okay.
To the other organization, it was a workshop in a hotel.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, we did not respond to the real need in the community because the donor felt that we were not adequate enough as an organization, as a local organization.
What can we concretely do after this? Make it as specific as possible. Name something, even if you can.
I think as Ugandans, since we are preparing into our general elections, and we have elections of special interest groups, we need to encourage these people to embrace leadership positions.
Right.
Yeah, that is what I think is important, because then their voices will be heard. We need to embrace them to take up the different leadership positions.
Yes, I like it. I know there's been a few initiatives, and if they are here, they should spotlight, that try to help special interest groups, help them, train them, create for them platforms, help them with their campaigns. I think some are there. I know there are some in Kenya. I don't know if there are some in Uganda. But if there are, please name them so that we know who they are and we can connect with them, yeah? Anything else?
Intensify on the documentation of the best practices. Sometimes a lot happens, especially at the grassroots organizations, but we lose track of what is happening because we are not documenting.
Yeah.
So we fail to share what has been our best practices, what challenges.
Yeah.
So we end up losing track.
Yeah.
When time comes up and they ask for this information, you fail to provide this necessary information, like a compendium of what you've been doing over the years. Thank you.
Event. However, after hearing and witnessing what you guys have been talking about, I've been amazed. I'm really kind of proud to be an African, and I'm proud to be standing here to be witnessing every one of you trying to make change. Now, I originally came to Rwanda to do real estate. However, at the age of 50, I actually found my purpose. It took me a long time, but Rwanda shaped me. My purpose is events, not just any events, but events like what you guys do. I want to be able to make change in a positive way and in a positive light. The lady there that mentioned the declaration, thank you so much. And I think we need to start by creating a WhatsApp group. Every single one of us should be able to create a community WhatsApp group. We all need to bring change. Do you understand? I'm very proud of President Kagame because he has brought me here in a way that I never would have imagined I'd be in Rwanda. I'm very emotional right now because being here with you guys, you give me hope. We all have hope. These ladies in front, I want to learn sign language. That's one of the things that I said to myself, I must learn sign language. I'm proud of the sisters and the brothers. We are proud of them, but you know what we need to do more? I heard this in agriculture where somebody mentioned, we're saying the same thing again and again and again. We need to be the change, not our leaders, but us. And it starts with us today. So my pledge is, let's create a powerful tool that will create change. Because we can do it. We are alive, we're well, we're healthy, but we must start with ourselves. We must not rely on our leaders. There are people in the villages, there are people in communities that need us. We are the driving force, and we shall drive this change by the grace of God. Thank you.
My name is Valeria from Let Up Impact Eldoret, Kenya. I think mine is a follow-up from the manifesto idea or the actionable things. Declarations, yes, the pledges. Like, how will we really make sure that what we wrote down today, right, in that sentence is actually done? Like, could we maybe build this as a suggestion, like an accountability systems, like maybe a buddy systems where after we leave here, like organizations are paired to be accountable for that. And then we either, the spotlight I like really highlight the organizations that are really holding themselves to whatever they have reflected on that moment, and create other moments for that to come to spotlight. Like, let's meet again if it's online. Let's not stop not discussing, but where are we going with the facts, really? And I don't know, an accountability system, basically, based on collaboration.
I love it. How do we hold, those who also resource our work accountable too? Because they also do some practices that we want to have a say about. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? And with that, we are bang on time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. He's doing for me sign line like he was, this is it, this is what he was waiting for. He's like, we are done. Fine, guys, we are done. Thank you very much for your patience and your engagement. We appreciate you very much. And please do keep engaging with us when you're asked. Thank you very much.